Hey guys, I'm Andrew McComb and welcome to Web3 TV. In today's video, I'm with Nikolas, the founder and CEO of Utiliti, and we're going to discuss the utility of Utiliti and why it matters to you as a Web3 consumer, developer and business owner. But before we do, make sure you register to watch every episode of Web3 TV here, where we share inspiring stories of all things Web3, making a difference to the world. All sorted? Okay, let's go. Nick, you're the founder and CEO of Utiliti, a one-stop platform to create, deploy, and manage blockchain applications. You've also presented a number of Web3 events, provide some great Web3 insights on social media platforms such as Twitter and LinkedIn on a daily basis most of the time, and you're clearly passionate about bringing Web3 to the mainstream. So, as always, with all our guests, tell us how this incredible journey began.
Yeah, that's a great question. So before I started this company, I was at Amazon Web Services, and I spent a few years there sort of, let's say, pushing the boulder up the hill, right? It's tough to get corporations, especially big ones, to buy into new things like Web3, like blockchain, like AI in some cases. And so for me, I was trying to build interest internally. I was trying to say, hey, look, like there's something happening here, and there's a spark and there's a market opportunity, and we should be paying attention, and formed internal communities and eventually just wasn't seeing sort of, let's say, the traction that I wanted to see as far as actual services being built, right? Infrastructure being built to support this development that was going on. And so I said, screw it, I'm going to do it myself. And talked to a bunch of my friends who were there. A few of them came with me. A bunch of my other colleagues, former colleagues and friends, and pulled them into this company. Like, hey, maybe we can do Web3 infrastructure, right? Tools for developers, for builders in a better way that hasn't been done before, with everything that we know from our backgrounds at AWS, right? The world's premier infrastructure company. And so for me, it was sort of an obvious choice, right? It's like what we're building are like Amazon Web Services, right? It's like foundational services at transparent and low costs. And we felt like it was a breath of fresh air for that level of, let's say, performance and functionality to be here where it wasn't previously. And so for me, it was a natural fit, right? It's a year later, and my job is not too different than it was before, right? Helping big customers think about how to implement cool technology to achieve business outcomes.
Cool, and now you're the big cheese.
Yeah. No more getting yelled at about service outages or anything like that. It's more talking to customers, and I guess, like you mentioned, posting on LinkedIn my unfiltered thoughts without the umbrella of the corporation.
Amazing. And so what was it that you saw? Like, I know, they talk about all trailblazers and innovators and that they can see things before others do. What were you seeing in regards to Web3?
Yeah, I mean, so fundamentally, I think it unlocks new business models and new economic models that are meaningfully more user-friendly than what is able to exist today. And now we haven't seen a lot of that, right? Like, outside looking in, I talk about this a lot, like, you look at it outside in from the mainstream perspective, and it's like, scams and rugs and Ponzi schemes and oh man, the big-haired vegan man stole a bunch of money from some people. But if you dig in deeper, right, you can sort of start to see these new business models be unlocked. And what Amazon showed me is that, like, on any sufficiently long time horizon, a business that provides a service that is eminently more user-friendly than any other service, right, that wins on a long enough time horizon. And so I think replacing sort of some of the archaic business models and structures of today with some of these new Web3 unlocks, it will be more user-friendly. And in a lot of cases today, it already is, right? And so that's what I saw was, hey, the world is moving this direction on the back of this technology. And I wanted to be a part of it, right? Like, I can dig really far into, what I mean by more user-friendly unlocks, and I won't take you on too long of a rant. But that's what I saw, is like, hey, look, this is going to help the world. This is going to help people. And it's important that I work on something that I find meaningful.
Amazing again. So we've obviously done multiple interviews. So guys, if this is your first time, I'll put a link up here to the What is Web3 interview. But just for the guys who may have seen you for the first time, or the viewers who've seen you for the first time, just a quick summation of what you see Web3 is, and then maybe just delve into those, what you can see the future of it unlocking Obviously, you
Yeah.
said you can talk about it for hours, but let's just do that in a short piece as well.
Yeah, I'll try to pare it down and not go too far into the jargon. So 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 when people think of Web3, they think of cryptocurrency primarily, and I think that that's just sort of one piece of the pie, right? You do have cryptocurrency, which is sort of it's a financial instrument unlocked by blockchain technology. You also have NFTs as part of that same like wedge of the circle. And then over here you have, let's say, decentralized file hosting, right? Like storing data in a way that is permanent, right? That is more cost effective, that is more performant in a lot of cases than what's offered by public clouds, right? And then over here you have smart contracts, right? Like programs running in perpetuity on the back of this technology, in absence of continual maintenance or intervention by centralized entities, and that makes up most of the pie that is Web3, and that in my head is a holistic view as compared to, hey, this is just cryptocurrency, which is a sliver. And as far as those more user-friendly unlocks that I was talking about, right, that's on the back of sort of decentralized file hosting, decentralized compute, right? Some of these new sort of paradigm changing technologies that are part of this Web3 label, but are not necessarily even blockchain, for example. And so I think the one that is most relevant and most reminiscent, I think, to regular people is probably this example of DeFi, it's decentralized finance, right? And the way I like to explain this, because I think it's safe to say that most people after 2008 don't love bankers, is like this. It's a bank is essentially means of moving your money from one asset to another, right? Just bytes in computer code moving from one database to another, right? And that's mostly computers facilitating that process. And so the question then becomes, does it stand to reason that all of these bankers deserve these exorbitant salaries when all they're doing is sitting over the top of bytes moving around computer code? And the answer is no, right? And so then it's like, well, what do we do about it? And in Web3, the unlock is basically this. It's instead of bankers and banker salaries, right, it's code, right, that moves the bytes around, and then it's a protocol, it's a foundation, it's a decentralized consensus of people deciding how that code should operate to the benefit of all the participants in the network, right, whose money makes up the value that the code is facilitating transfer of, right? And so in absence of all those banker salaries being sucked out of this equation, right, there's more return left on the table for regular people. And you can abstract this example, and these are the examples that I'm most excited about, right? It's like this idea of, semi-parasitic centralized entity, which in a capitalist society, fair enough, right? It's like, that's what we're all gold on doing, and it makes perfect sense. But if you replace that entity with one that is purely existing to serve the benefit of the network of people that sort of support the entity's proliferation, right? Then you can sort of align incentives better. And this is align incentives only possible through Web3. And so I see this model being translated to creator platforms, to games, to social platforms, right? Artists owning the rights to their songs and hosting them and distributing them on platforms that are not necessarily owned by some entity that has a profit motive for itself, so much as a collective of artists and coders goal in facilitating the growth of the platform, right? It's interesting, right? It's something we haven't seen before, or maybe something that we haven't seen for thousands of years. If we go back far enough, maybe there were systems like this. And so that's what is most exciting to me about the future of these use cases, right? Is more return, more benefit left on the table for people, to the negative, to, I suppose, the detriment of sort of pseudo-parasitic entities who are maybe taking more meat off the bone than they otherwise should.
Yeah, and not being found out about it necessarily either, right? So obviously being on the blockchain, it's more transparent, more visible, and can help cut some of that, should I say, the big C word. Well, not necessarily, it's capitalism, but it's also corruption at points, right?
Right.
So essentially what I'm hearing is it's bringing the power back to the individual as opposed to the big corporate.
Right. And nothing wrong with capitalism, right? This isn't an indictment of capitalism by any means, right? It produces innovation. It aligns incentives very well, but in some cases, not quite well enough as compared to this alternative, right? It's like, it's the best we've got, but in some cases with this new digital primitive that we've created, right, there's better.
Yeah, it's just more equitable, right? Fair, equitable, transparent. Very
Right.
good. So was that the underlying driver when you saw the vision of what was coming, what you could be part of, that drives the whole utility, or is it more than that for you?
Yeah, I mean, definitely seeing what's going to happen and no, like you spend enough time at Amazon and you watch Amazon business units win in every domain they enter simply because they put their customers first. You know that a more customer friendly unlock made possible by a particular technology means that the technology is going to proliferate, right? Like that was obvious to me. My personal axe that I have to grind here is, well, it's that, right? It's slightly more personal, right? So like I think a big problem that's faced the space historically speaking has been that it is so complicated to develop anything here that, you know, between all the different L1s and L2s and morass of VC funded chains and how XTPS and YTPS and oh, our chain can do this and that, it's impossible for a regular person to make sense of that, especially a regular developer, and then to go build anything useful. And past that, it's, I would say, prohibitively complex, or it has historically been prohibitively complex and costly to go build anything on the blockchain. And I think that's, if you look at what people have mostly built on the blockchain, that's obvious, right? It's mostly financial instruments and it's a lot of scams. So you know, it's so complicated that the only reason anyone develops anything, historically speaking, in a lot of cases, has been simply to immediately cash grab. And so my thought is basically like, hey, you know, if we can bring this Amazon energy, right, this AWS level of operational excellency to blockchain infrastructure and tools, right, then we can bring costs down for, you know, your average person in Bangalore who might have an idea that changes the world but doesn't have the funding to operate infrastructure, right, and then we can make it, you know, possible and easy for web 2 developers to enter this world. And so our big idea is basically like, you know, hey, we start to see some of these more beautiful unlocks that are actually help the world if we make it possible for anybody, any developer with any skill set, working with any tech stack, to build on any blockchain, right? And that's our idea, and that's my personal axe to grind, is like, hey, maybe we can make this so easy that finally there'll be a use case built on our platform that I can point to and tell my mother, like, okay, this is why I quit, right? This is why I walked away from that corporate job, and this is why it's important.
Very cool, mate. Great purposeful business, which is obviously what drives you as well. Get you up every day. Utility wasn't the first foray though, was it? What happened before utility that then drove you to utility as a business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So like everybody else dabbling in the space as a builder, right? I'd always been an investor since 2012 and deeper and deeper as the years went on. And then finally in the end of 2021, I was, oh, I should do something myself. Like I have an idea here. And the original idea was a Web3 game, right? It's called Hero Galaxy. We built an NFT collection. The idea was, you know, to use the NFT collection to sort of bootstrap a gaming ecosystem for existing Web2 gamers to come into this Web3 world, and then funnel the, you know, the success of the game back to this original set of holders. And then, you know, like any business, you realize your original idea was kind of dumb and it might not work. And in our case, it was formally banned by Microsoft since the original engine was built on Minecraft. And so then the idea was basically, well, I mean, we had a hell of a time building that original platform, right? That original game. And we had to solve a lot of problems 0 to 1 ourselves in order to make what we wanted to have the user experience be real, right? Like none of the infrastructure we could find could support this like sub 50 millisecond latency or real-time performance, Gen Z, TikTok level attention span experience. And so we built it all from the ground up ourselves. And so when you know, we were having to consider pivoting, it was really just a return to my roots personally and the rest of the team. It's like, we're all SaaS people. We all came from this world of software as a service, and that's what we've built here. And so we may as well package it up and give it to the rest of the world to do what they want to with it. And now, fortunate to say, we've got a lot of people who are much better and smarter at figuring out what that iterated use case should be for the technology, implementing it, playing with it, large corporations, massive Web3 games, and people who know more than me about how to, you know, what that abstraction looks like. I'm happy to be powering them.
Amazing journey. So what I hear is the passion and the purpose and the vision early on. Your first foray was Hero Galaxy, and obviously for what you've just explained, couldn't continue in its current form. But as a journey progresses, you saw the potential to implement even more into Web3. Just tell us, I guess, for the viewer who's not familiar with Utiliti, what actually is the company and what does it do, and who is it
Yeah.
for?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I kind of alluded to this, but Utility is a platform that lets any developer in any coding language build on any blockchain they want to, right? And so we sort of see the blockchain as a database, like most people do, right? It's a ledger. It's a unique kind of ledger, but it is indeed a ledger. And so our thesis is basically, regular developers, right? Regular people who don't even want to develop anything should be able to interact with the blockchain as though it was a regular database. And so, you look at the entire, you know, A to Z of everything that anybody's doing on the blockchain, you can boil it down to basically 4 or 5 things, right? It's just you're pulling data off the blockchain, you're putting data onto the blockchain, you're moving data on the blockchain around, and then you're standing up accounts, the wallets that hold this data. And so we, looking at where the space was headed, invented a few new pieces of technology that allows people to do that easier and faster than historically possible. And then we, as compared to what previously existed before us, right, packaged all these different functions, wallets, data, transactions into one place where they can all be called from within one API or invoked from one, developer dashboard, right? So like today, any developer can build on any blockchain with the platform. As we progress, the hope is that any regular person like me, right, I'm not an engineer, any regular person like me would be able to go on and stand up their Web3 idea, whatever it might be, and have an easy way to do the most commonly deployed functions on the blockchains. That's the plan, right? And so we serve enterprises and all the way down to single developers, right? Like you look at the heat map of the few thousand different people using the software today. It's like a lot of folks in India, a lot of folks in the United States, a few big corporations in the US that I knew from my time at AWS, and a long tail of really smart people who might be changing the world.
Yeah. And so could the general public use it, or do you have to be a developer, or is it different layers of it? Is it that, like, to what I'm hearing is you've really simplified the process. So is it that
Yeah.
simple that anyone can do it, or you still have to have a tech background?
I would say today you probably would have to have a tech background. Like I can get through it, right? And I could go run a mint with our software if I wanted to, is just as a simple example. Our North Star really is that, hey, the platform should be like a warm hug for anybody who wants to build on the blockchain, right? It should take you from A to B and do that education along the way. And so we're hoping, 4, 5, 6 months more development, a few thousand more customers to learn from. We'll be at a place where it's, hey, average Joe on the street can take the platform and do anything that they want to. But until then, it's primarily tech people using it today. I always say it's a developer platform right now.
So my understanding would be it's kind of like if I've got an idea for a website or a business, I would go to a developer who would then use your tools to create it for the customer. But it's not for websites, it's for blockchain related activity.
Exactly, right. And honestly, the person you go to, we would help coach them through implementing our software. And then a lot of times they're plugging it into websites, right? Like the biggest customers we have, the national branded department stores, things like that. They work with really smart developers, and we hope we hold their hand and help them figure out, like, hey, how do you use this platform to deal with the blockchain? What do you want to do on the blockchain? How should it work? And what does the structure of these API calls need to look like to accomplish what you're looking to accomplish in your business?
Yeah. And the people who come to you at the moment, do they have different ideas? Are they similar ideas? I guess I'm just looking at it again. If I look at, say, WordPress as an example, and it gives you the themes and it gives you the plugins to give you the ability to create whatever you come up with as a creator, business
Right.
owner, let's call it business owners, that then we use a web developer maybe to help us integrate it to our, into our hosting, etc. But like, is there a wide range of people that come to you with different ideas, or is it, sort of down the same line, or what's happening at the moment?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we do see some repeatability. Like a lot of people will use it to build a token marketplace, like an NFT marketplace, or, I think one of the use cases we're starting to see repeated is like, I'm a Web2 brand and I want to leverage Web3 assets to drive engagement for my business, but I want my existing Web2 customers to be able to engage in this Web3 digital loyalty program, right? How do I onboard them into wallets and accounts, and the ability to sort of deal with these assets without them really experiencing any friction, right? Without them having to realize. And so we see that one repeated a lot. I think the coolest one that I was talking about even today was sort of a ticketing platform, right? An event gating platform potentially using our services just to airdrop NFTs when people show up at events. I think it's pretty cool. And so, a few repeated use cases, a lot of games, but a bunch of fragmented things too. Like we've got a few people building things that I would never even have begun to conceive of. I won't dig too far into those, but it's a power law thing, right? A lot of the same, and then a few out on the edge that are wildly unique.
Yeah. And what I love too, Nick, is you have the vision of obviously fundamentally helping the world or making a difference to the world. Do you find like the people or the clients that approach you have also got those fundamental values that they want to make a difference to with the offering that they're creating?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to think about. Yeah, I think mostly, right? Like it's I want to give this question the thought that it deserves, right? It's, what does it take in a person to want to be here in this space building, especially after, all the ups and downs and the fact that it's intrinsically tied to this, pseudo financial instrument market where people can say, oh, it's done and it's dead every so often. And, it's all scams because of the actions of a few bad actors. Like, look, what does it take in a person to want to be here? I think, yeah, I would say it's sort of, not exactly a type A personality, right? It's like somebody who is thinking outside of the box, somebody high in trait openness, right? Who kind of has the ability to sort of wrap their head around what might be, right? What might be unlocked by this technology that's actually, more interesting or more user friendly than what exists today. That's most of the people I meet here are people who are especially creative, right? High in trait openness, high in a lot of cases, trait compassion, right? Who want to see this tech make the world a better place.
And for those, I guess, who have been demotivated by crypto, especially in the recent times, like, I'm just always trying to think from the potential customer perspective, do you have to have an understanding of it, or could they just have to see their own vision and then understand that? I guess what I'm getting at is they may not know what they don't know yet. And if crypto is all they know, then it potentially puts them off. But what I know of talking to you in the past is you're providing potentially infinite possibilities for people to get on Web3 that are not crypto related. Crypto, as you mentioned earlier, is a small part of the pie. So if that is the case and they don't know what they don't know, where do they go to learn what they don't know? Or is it best just to have a conversation with you guys and see if their vision's even possible?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, I'm happy to talk to anybody, right? Like I just spent an hour and a half earlier today talking to the VP at a national department store about what his vision for the world was, and we don't like charge people for that. It's not like we're consultants. It's more just like, what do you need to get from point A to point B, and maybe it is our infrastructure that powers it. And that's awesome if it is. And so like, as far as seeking out information, I think tough to separate signal from noise in this space, right? Like if you didn't pay attention or if you opened half your eye and kind of looked at it from far away, it's like, all you see is the bad stuff because that's the only thing that people publicize loudly. But if you look a little further, it's sort of like most of the people who are actually building real things in this space, they don't care about cryptocurrency. Most of them have nothing to do with it. Most of them are like out on the edge thinking about like, what does consumer data protection look like in a world where consumers own their data? It has nothing to do with crypto. And so I think like tough to separate signal from noise right now. A lot of noise for sure. Good people to follow out there. I would find people that you trust and follow them. And then, I feel like, build space for learners, learn Web3 for learners, rare skills for learners. And I'm blanking on Calypsis. For learners. These are all great platforms to start to get, blockchain 101, blockchain basics, right? Like what's actually going on here from a technical perspective, like what does a tech do?
Yeah. I guess the other thing that's intuitively coming to me is like the more we interview the likes of yourself and some of the other Web3 experts is the just being part of that community as a whole, like for our viewers, if they, obviously if they click the link below to our episodes, they get to meet people like you without necessarily meeting you. So they're being open, their minds being open to all the possibilities that are out there through all the amazing people that are doing some incredible things in this space.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, right? It's like it's definitely very familial right now, tribal. Maybe say it's like most of the information is still word of mouth, right? Because I don't think like big mainstream media has a whole lot of interest in covering any of what's going on outside of the very splashy financial instrument disasters. And so if you want to learn about what's actually going on here, what are the real builders working on, right? Like it was a trope last year, all the brightest minds are going into Web3, and maybe that was true, maybe it wasn't, but those bright minds didn't end up mostly working on pure crypto projects, right? Like that's just one, like I mentioned, one tiny piece of the pie of what's going on here. And you got a lot of those people end up at like IPFS or Filecoin, where it's like it's making decentralized file storage so cheap and so highly available that there's almost no great reason to use in a few years any centralized file hosting services. That has nothing to do with the blockchain, nothing to do with crypto, nothing to do with NFTs. It's revolutionizing data storage with this principle of distributed computing.
Mm. I see, the more I look into the space, the more there's a crypto winter, the more you actually realize what's being built behind the scenes and by some significantly large companies, right? They clearly see the vision of Web3 and the possibilities long term.
Right. Definitely. I mean, definitely, right. Winter for speculative investors is definitely not winter for people who are building real things. And I'm sad and I'm happy, right? Like I do hold cryptocurrency, right? Like I bought some in 2012, and it sucks that all the innovation here has sort of got this shroud of hey, it's all a financial instrument cast over it, because most of it isn't really. Most of it isn't. Just a tool that makes up a tiny slice of the pie.
Mm. And what do you find in utility? Like, I guess the biggest challenges that you're helping the consumer solve by getting on the blockchain and into Web3?
Yeah, two distinct challenges, right? Like in my head, the real problem utility is solving is basically like the multi-ended problem of adoption, right? On one hand, you have developers who need to build cool things, right, in order for regular users to want to come use them, right? And those cool things should probably say, not like the word decentralization even has too many syllables for a mainstream user to even interpret, right? And so these things have to be so cool and so eminently useful for these end users that it's just better, right? In the tech, just any discussion of the technology that powers them gets faded to the background, right? And that's one end of the problem we're trying to solve. And the other end of the problem is we're trying to solve is, how does this guy over here, or girl, right, whoever, right, link to these people over here, right? How do you onboard these people in here? And so we built like invisible wallets that can frictionlessly onboard people with social logins, and transaction relay that make sure with these people when they want to interact with assets on the blockchain, right, they're not having to sign a transaction or send a transaction or pay a gas fee if they don't want to, right? And then sort of building the scaffolding for them to slow walk their way into a world where at whatever point they choose, they can say, hey, I want my keys, like give them here. I want my own wallet. I want to self-custody these things. And, I want to be participating in this world.
So do you develop that as part of the company, or is it additional, call them suppliers that you work with, or how does that scenario work where there's different plugins, different features?
Yeah. So we'll support people in implementing the software. Like all the functionality that I just mentioned is native to the platform today, right? They're just different APIs that we built, different piece of technology that we built that allow people to, invoke this functionality of onboarding a mainstream user or sending a transaction without paying gas or whatever it is that they want to do, right? That stuff we built in-house. And then we handle people through plugging it in, right? We have support plans, we have enterprise support plans, we have service SLAs where, if you're a massive multinational company and you want to move on this because you see that it's a better way to capitalize on the top 10% of your customers who produce 50% of your revenue, right? It's like, happy to hold your hand, happy to give you that enterprise support SLA and talk to you in Slack all day long. And that's typically how people engage with us, right? It's like, they'll come to us with an idea and it's infancy. They've heard about our reputation as sort of like AWS for the blockchain, basically is a rep we've developed for better or for worse. And they'll, understand that, hey, we're here to help them, right? It's like, we're here just to make some of these experiences better, empower them with our tools, and get them from point A to point B.
All right. Well, I know you've mentioned it in a different way, but I want you to, if you have your potential customers or clients out there and you want to talk to them about what they can build with utility, maybe some of the examples, what would those be? So obviously games,
Good question.
data storage is another. What else?
Yeah. So games is a great one. Innovative storage solutions is a great one. There's a few data analytics platforms being built with our services, right? It's like pull data off the blockchain, display it real time to users. It's one of the services we have on the platform. You think a little bit further out, a little bit more creative, right? We have a couple social platforms being built. Like we have I don't know how much I can say about this, but it's called a Spotify killer, backed by some really some big names in the music industry, being built on the platform using a few different of our services. That will make a run at Spotify using that model that I mentioned, the sort of creator-owned model. That's one. A couple big corporations doing digital loyalty with the platform, right? It's like, how do we engage the top 10% of our customers better? Their model is, creative in most cases. These are very smart people who've taken their time, watched, waited, and deployed this in I would say, creative way, right? A careful way. It's like, give the NFTs away for free to my best customers, pull them into a Discord group, give them offers for additional engagement and learn from them, as opposed to just selling the NFTs. Let me think. What's the craziest thing being built? I think the craziest thing being built is so we give people access to this on-chain messaging protocol, and there's a company out there that is letting folks basically send messages back and forth from these different custodial wallets, right? So if you have some X brand custodial wallet, you can get a message from Y brand who knows to serve you the message simply because you're holding an NFT. I think that's pretty fascinating. Yeah.
And that's probably the word for it, mate, is fascinating. So those who have been fascinated by hearing about utility, where would they start?
Good question. Come talk to me, right? This is a luxury to be able to say this, and maybe I won't be able to in a year, but right now, I want to talk to most of the people who build on the platform, right? I'll go have conversations with even the folks that our salespeople bring in. It's like, what are you building? Like, how can we help? And so, find me on LinkedIn. My name is spelled wrong because my parents are hippies. So Nikolas Moore, Nikolas. You can look me up there. You could DM me. That'd be awesome. Otherwise, go to our website, right? It's like utility, but with an I at the end, just utility with an I instead of a Y. And there you can get in touch with us. You can get started for free. You can check out our docs. You can see what we're up to, right? See how maybe some of these services might benefit you, right? And in a perfect world, the unlock here is some Web2 corporation with Web2 developers wants to build something cool and uses their existing engineering team to go build something cool with the platform.
And in that process, Nick, you'll help ideate with people as well, even if they're not sure what they're not sure about at this point. You've got obviously yourself and some of your creative team that would help with other possibilities for them.
Absolutely, right? Like we're here to help, and that I think is we've got a lot of really smart people who've spent a long time in this space and kind of have a good sense of what the really smart people are doing versus what sort of the more extractive implementations are, let's say. And so do our best to steer people in the right direction as far as how to implement these tools to drive value.
Brilliant. Well, guys, if you want to find out more about utility, click the link below in the description, or I'll put a lower third there for you as well. The other thing that's exciting to me is we're going to create another video where Nick's going to talk about some of the business use cases. So if you are interested in Web3 technology and you think you've got a potential for your business, have a listen to the video or watch the video, which we'll put here, a link for you. If you haven't watched our Web3 video and then our frequently asked questions about Web3, you can look earlier in the video. We would have put a link there for you. So, Nick, thank you as always for coming on the show, mate. We'll see you in the business use cases video, and I'm sure we'll be talking for many years to come.
Yep, sounds good to me. Pleasure as always, Andrew. Thanks again for the time and the excellent questions.
Well, there it is, guys. I hope you enjoyed this Web3 TV episode. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below. And remember, if you'd like to watch every episode of Web3 TV, visit the link below or subscribe to our channel. And remember to hit the bell icon so that we can notify you every time a new episode is released. I'm Andrew McComb, and I look forward to sharing more inspiring Web3 TV episodes, making a difference to the world. I'll see you soon.